highlights of my entire life.
Kind of like that.
I went, the path that I'm on may not actually get me where I want to go. I had that moment where my brain just broke, and it was like, whoa, whoa, and I couldn't hear anything really, and it just broke me. We get to be warriors for love. We get to be spiritual badasses who are willing to take a stand for love and for compassion and stand up for that.
We are live. We are live for let's do it. Yeah, let me put my phone on non-disturb mode here. Let's be cautious of time. So it's okay. We'll go for about an hour and a half, or an hour 15. The max would be, right? Ish. So yeah, brother, thank you for being here. Thanks for being the first kind of guinea pig of this whole setup as a full deep dive. A friend of mine stopped by earlier for a few moments. I was just showing him around. That was kind of the first few moment recording, but this is the first like a deep dive. So yeah, thank you for being here. The goal for this podcast, and this is the first time I guess I'm defining it. I've been kind of thinking about it for a while, and it is, I see myself, I mentioned to you, as a scientist who is not using conventional tools like a microscope or a telescope. I use my curiosity and my ability to ask questions about, to learn about life through human experience, through human stories. And I think starting with learning about people's kind of the essence, their core signature, what really defines them, or what that delta between them and other humans having the human experience here. I think it's important to have an idea who is that person in front of you that you're communicating. And I'd love for you to give me kind of a brief, maybe story. I'd like to put it kind of on the timeline, your whole life trajectory, put it on a timeline, and give me a few defining kind of points on that line that really formed you the way you are as your personality, the way you formed your opinion about life and things like that,
Just the like highlights of my entire life.
Kind of like that. So things that really changed, like shaped you the way you are, some of the like important milestones. What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going chronologically through my life, number one, birth, obviously, and I experienced sexual abuse at the age of 5. I was molested at the age of 5, and the interesting thing about that is, depending on how you put that on my timeline, starts at 5, but it was actually a repressed memory that I didn't remember until I was 30 years old. And so it's, with the timeline, there's this interesting thing where it's like, it happened here, but it actually didn't happen until here when I became aware of it, right? Which speaks to the bigger question of what's actually happening is really more about what we're aware of. And but at that age, to go through an experience like that, and it does sit in the unconscious mind, right? And so it became something that then would impact every area of my life and continues to impact every area of my life in a lot of ways. And only later did I become aware of how, the feelings of not being safe on the planet, literally just not feeling safe in my body, the issues I had with physical intimacy, just a number of things that I couldn't actually identify why. I just thought, oh, this is the way that I am. I just am that way. I don't know. And you can imagine someone like myself who is such explorer of human consciousness, and particularly my own consciousness, going in from plant medicines to meditations to intense just life experiences to explore who am I, why am I, to not have that answer for so long, to not know, and to know that there's something like, why do I have this issue with intimacy? And just be pulling my hair out trying to figure that out, but not having the answer, was so frustrating for a long time. And I know that it led to me believing that there was something wrong with me, that there's something wrong with me. And I don't know what it is. And yet, um, that was a reverberation of knowing that something had happened, but not knowing what it was. And so that creating that disconnect in my own consciousness, leading to that experience. So, that was a major one that continues to reveal its ramifications. And the next big one that I would say that really happened, was when I was 18. I won Homecoming King in high school. And Homecoming King, if you're not familiar, so it's like, a giant popularity contest. It's like the prom king. I don't know if in movies you see, the popular jock that wins the thing, and there's these movies where, that really are about that, right? And
You won one of those.
I won that for my high school, yeah. And so why this was such a big deal for me was because I hit puberty really late. And so my dad's from the Philippines, and growing up, I was a tiny, tiny kid. And I was also half Asian, and surrounded when we moved to Arizona, from California to Arizona, I was the ethnic one in my group of friends. For the most part, everyone was just white kids. And, um, so I always felt a little different, and especially being so small, I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel masculine. All my friends were hitting puberty and getting girls, and they were just becoming men to some degree. And I didn't feel that. And so I went, well, I'm just going to be more successful than everyone. I'm really smart. I'm charismatic. I'm going to do that. And, I basically set out to win high school as much as I could. I'm going to win it. And so that led to me, varsity sports, president of clubs, being elected to student body, all of these things. But the holy grail was Homecoming King, to be voted basically most popular. And
What does that entail? Like, what do you have to do to win that?
yeah, so basically what happens is everyone in school votes. And so we had, I don't know, 3,000 kids at my school or something like that. And so everyone at the school gets to vote. And so I got voted. I won that.
But you still have to present your like that you are applying for, basically.
No, you don't have to apply. So the way that it technically works is, each grade elects people. So you have something called a homeroom, and that is, every I think it's every day. Every day. I'm not sure. I don't remember now. It's been so long. But during that time, the teachers pass out these ballots. And the first round is you can only vote for your grade. So as a senior in high school, you get to write in 3 names, 3 girls, 3 guys. And you write in the names, and then you submit them. And the names that get the most votes are now on the ballot. And then once you're on the ballot as a senior, the entire school gets that ballot and just votes. And so I had to first be elected by the senior class, by people writing in my name. And then once I was eligible on the ballot, then the entire school voted. And like the real reason I won for the most part is because my brother and sister also went to the school. So they were freshmen and sophomores. So most freshmen and sophomores don't know any seniors, but they know, wow, this is your brother? Okay, I'm going to vote. And then I also was that guy who towed the line, where I was in all the honors classes, and I have like a lot of friends in band and in those honors classes. And I was also in sports and doing that. And so I went out drinking, and I was in that kind of cool crowd to some degree as well. So I just had a wide reach, and that led to me winning.
That's cool. Your face was basically in a lot of different places with a lot of different types of cool people and
Just different groups, right? I went to one of those stereotypical high schools where there's a lot of cliques, right? You had the band people, you had the jocks, you had the, you know, the drama kids. It was just like the kind of almost Americanized movie version of high school. And so because of and I'm still that way. I have so many interests. I have so many different places I plant my feet. I make music that's pop, hip hop that goes out on Spotify. I make a poet that gets to perform around the world. And I love plant medicine. There's just so many places that I like to play. And so winning Homecoming King was for me this holy grail of means that I've won. I'm popular, I'm cool, I'm loved, all these things. And so once I won, the next morning I woke up and nothing had changed. I still had all this fear, doubt, insecurity. I didn't feel cooler. I didn't feel more masculine. I didn't feel different. In fact, I had this anxiety in my system because now I didn't have well, if you do this, it's all going to be better. I had that up until then. I thought if everyone liked me, if I won, then I would feel better, but I didn't. And now I didn't know what to do. And so there's a little existential kind of anxiety on the tail end of that. And so that was such a huge turning point because that was the moment where I went, the path that I'm on may not actually get me where I want to go. And so I started to question the path that I was on. That's when I really started to look into reading books on personal development. That's when I really started to look at, okay, what does make me happy?
yeah, that self-inquiry started basically at the moment where you were working towards something that you think going to bring you happiness and fulfillment, and then you didn't really feel a whole lot different, and it was like, oh, maybe that's not it. Maybe there's something else to it.
Yeah, and that's one of the most common ways that people awaken is getting the thing that they thought that they wanted this whole time, and it's not moving the needle, and that's why as a coach, because I am a coach, I work with people one-on-one for the most part. And the people that I attract into my field who I end up working with, a lot of them are coming to me because there's that similar resonance of people who have they've hit a level of success, but it didn't do what they thought it was going to do. And that's why even when I first started out as a quote unquote life coach, I was working as a 30-year-old. I was working with 45, 50-year-old individuals who were multimillionaires. But I understood that thing of feeling like you checked all the boxes and it didn't actually move the needle. And so that led to me being on that journey of, okay, now what? And so that was a huge turning point for me. And, yeah. And then I would say the next major turning point for me would be my spiritual awakening. And that happened in 2013, January 2013, on the tail end of 2012 being the most difficult year of my life up until that point. Every aspect of my identity, all of the things that I thought made me who I was, from my career to the amount of money that I had to my physical body and physical health, to like all of it falling apart, all of it. And I had moved out to LA to pursue acting because part of my journey towards happiness was, okay, what makes me happy? And I remember I used to act as a kid. I used to be in plays and stuff, and I loved that. And so in college, while getting a marketing degree, I started taking acting classes again. And I realized, wow, I love this. This is amazing. And then I realized when I started working in an ad agency, I don't love this. I guess I'll follow my heart. Let me go and move to Los Angeles and pursue an acting career. And after years of struggle, because an acting career at the beginning, for the most part, is just rejection after rejection after rejection. And after years of that, I had gotten into this desperate contract with an acting manager who was like verbally abusive to me on the phone. That's how desperate I was. and such low self-esteem at that point. And
It's been like a few years of you like really actively.
I'd been actively trying for probably 5 years at that point, 6 years, and I was good. I mean, make no mistake. As far as I still went out there with the mindset, I'm going to be the best. And so was constantly in acting classes, was studying, like really dove in. And after 5 to 6 years of it, I was losing my wits about me. I was feeling so defeated. And I signed this contract with a manager, and it was a bad contract. And to get out of that contract, he made me print out my bank account statement and give him every dollar I had to get out of it. And at the time, it wasn't that much, it was like 3 grand, but it was everything. After years of struggle, it was everything. And so I had a financial zero that I ended up getting into. My iPhone got stolen and all of my like little things like that. I had my career, that all these close calls that were the rug pulled out from under me at the last minute, literally giant roles that I was said was mine. And then the weekend before shooting, nope. And just these heartbreaks. And then one day I was driving to work, and someone ran a stop sign and T-boned my car, and I had to get hip surgery, and I had migraines because I had to hit my head, but I couldn't stop working because I had no money. And so at the time I was a personal trainer. I had my own personal training business. So I was going into the gym and I was getting these headaches from the migraines, from the music and everything, but I had to work. And then I walked out. So I had that accident. And a week later, I walk out of the gym and I would go to the car. My rental car had been hit and run on the side of the road and just demolished. And I just lost it. I had that moment where my brain just broke, and it was like, womp, womp, and I couldn't hear anything really. And it just broke me. And in that, they say the cracks are where the light gets in, like all of this armor, this identity of homecoming king and scholarship to college and varsity sports and all of those things, like all of that identity broke in that moment. And I went, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't think I have life figured out like I thought I did. And in that moment of humility, it opened me up to, okay, what else is there then? And I reached out to the only spiritual friend that I had at the time. It was one person who I just met who was talking about meditation and how much he meditated and all this stuff. And I went, I need to call this person. And I called him and I said, I need help. I need some sort of aura cleansing, or I don't even know what you would call it, but I just need a reset. There's a dark cloud over me and I can't break free. And he put me into contact with someone, and that eventually led me into an ayahuasca ceremony. And in January 2013, I sat in my first ever ayahuasca ceremony, not really knowing too much about it. And I sat on a Friday night and a Saturday night. And between that one weekend, I completely shifted. I had my mind blown. I didn't believe in we're all connected. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in crystals. I didn't believe in any of that. And in one weekend, I had enough evidence, because that's the thing. It's not like, oh, I just had this experience. I had evidence of different pieces that it was my logical mind. It became something where it felt more illogical that it was all random coincidence than actually there's something greater at play here, tying all these things together. And it satisfied that logical part of my brain that went, wow, there is something here. And I became a believer. I had my awakening, and I don't love that word, but I don't know a better word for it, because you actually don't know that you were asleep until you wake up. And so once I woke up, it was, what is this? And I still am the same person, where I went, how do I be the best? How do I be the best spiritual person? How do I become the best at manifesting? How do I do this? And I just started researching, and I just started listening to podcasts. I just started to look up YouTube videos about how to love myself more. And I just started taking in as much information as I could. And so that was me at basically 28, 29 years old, 28 years old. And it just was the shift onto the path I am now. And so I would say those events have all been massive in me getting to where I am now. And I have more, but those are some major ones.
Man, that gives me such a clear now kind of idea of what your essence is. Like, thank you for breaking it down like that. I think it really uh I don't know. It does feel like it defines your trajectory really well. It certainly not defines you as a like going forward, like as a human, what you can become, but it certainly describes in high detail as to what you've gone through so far. Like, this is a cool way to like. I really enjoyed that kind of journey or story, if you will. I don't know if you've ever told it from the time you were born like that before, but it felt like you were very aware of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that if I've told it from birth to that in a way, but these are all stories that definitely I have shared, because my journey of that awakening became, let me start sharing. I legitimately was learning all this stuff and I just started recording videos I was dating someone at the time who she was going through hers as well alongside me. And she inspired me to just start recording videos, and I started sharing what I was learning. And that sharing of what I was learning was the basis for what has now become my whole brand and social media. Is I've been putting out videos about what I've been learning about consciousness since 2013. And we're recording this in 2021. So 8 years now that I've been just putting out videos for free on the internet saying, this is what I'm learning. And that has evolved into, now I have my podcast, The Deep Dive, and now I have YouTube and Instagram and all of these places. These are just extensions of what I started in 2013. And that's why, to me, that moment was so pivotal, because it was not just let me like an awakening. It was also, for whatever reason, I've always been a storyteller. Obviously, I moved out to LA to pursue acting, and started writing and directing. And so sharing the story of my life started really in 2013.
Hmm. Yeah, ayahuasca experience was also very transformational for me. My exposure also to spirituality. I was never really spiritual before. Definitely not religious. I had kind of guesses that there certainly might be some higher force, or let's say I believed in your thought manifestation, projecting positive thinking. I was always a positive thinker, so that was my level of believing in the higher powers.
You moved here when you're 21. So is that a normal thing in Belarus? Like, do people have that kind of mentality, positive thinking?
No, no, absolutely not.
So where did you get that?
I think I was born with it. As long as I remember, I always resonated with the idea that I can manifest something with my thoughts. With that, and then when I think The Secret, the movie, solidified that for me. Like, okay, this is what I'm experiencing.
Mm.
But as long as I remember, I would always, anything that I would want, I would start projecting into the universe, and then eventually will come. Is like, okay, this happened, and so I would confirm it for myself that that's working.
Mm.
I didn't really fully understand how to like speed up that process, or like all of the like how it all works, but it was serving me well, and I was utilizing that technique my entire life, as long as I remember. Anything kind of somewhat far into the future, I would set my goal, and I would try to think of that future as often as I could, especially in the moments where I feel the best. Like when I feel happy or enjoying the experience, I would always try to remind myself, like, oh, I want to connect this emotion with that future that I'm going forward,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah. I mean, that's really valuable. Really, really great that you just seem to always have that. For me, it took a lot of throwing up in buckets. and and yeah, I think that for me, you know, it's it's become something where I realize now that I just was so stubborn, you know? It's like the more we think we know, the less we have to learn. And so I thought because of my early successes, that life, I had it figured out. I knew what I was doing, you know, set a goal, got it done. And it wasn't until I set such a massive goal, you know, to decide to be an actor and say, I want to make it in the acting industry is there's very few in like goals that are quite as difficult to achieve, I think. Um, and I remember feeling that part of that was a responsibility. You know, my dad coming from the Philippines and immigrating to this country, there was always this very spoken and unspoken thing of I came to this country with nothing and I gave you everything. So you need to accomplish so much. It's a very common immigrant mentality. And I know a lot of, you know, second generation here that are born here, we can feel that pressure. And so for me, feeling like I've been blessed with so much and therefore I got to pick the biggest goal possible and achieve that because becoming a doctor or a lawyer, that would be easy in my mind, that would have been the easy path for me, and it would have made my dad super proud for me to become a doctor or a lawyer. And I'm not shitting on doctors or lawyers. I'm saying for me to just continue in schooling and do that. I was great in school, straight A's all the way through, academic scholarship. Like that was the easy thing to pursue a creative endeavor of the heart, where so much of it feels outside of your control. Um, yeah, that was to me felt like the scarier thing, but it would give me the bigger platform to make impact, and that's really what I was going for, and that's been the core of everything for me, honestly, is I wanna create impact on this planet. I want to see this world, um, shift into more love and more prosperity for everyone, and I know that it's possible.
Yeah, I have the exact same vision because I realize that there are no them. It's all like we're all the same, and it's like seeing that your hand is bleeding and not taking care of it. That would be dumb, you know. So it's part of you. You take care of it the same way that you want the world to be the most beautiful place because that's you, you know. That's kinda how I see it for that that's my perspective of why I also want the world to be the most beautiful, abundant, place where there are no conflict, there are no, suffering, because that's what I would like to, uh like, it's part of me. I'm experiencing my body being immersed in that type of environment, but it's still part of my own experience. What it's kind of it's the same. It's basically my skin just defines the boundaries. If you take like liquid here and liquid here, but then there is just a definition of a form, just as a conceptual thing. Like here is the form, but everything else is basically space. Um, my experience is on the edges of that form, but I'm experiencing the totality of it.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree, and that's, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Nassim Haramein, but Nassim, is a theoretical physicist who's doing incredible work,
Yeah.
and he is, uh, yeah, his description of it is very much the same. We are just like in this giant soup, and the only thing between you and the soup is a thin membrane, so to speak. Yeah.
You mentioned about like setting really high goals, and then I'd like to hear your like so the higher goals you set for yourself, the most challenging path that you set on yourself, the more potentially anxiety you might experience on the way there. It doesn't have to be that way, absolutely not. But there's a I feel like there is certainly some relationship that potentially globally is not healed. And that's why I believe that the anxiety that everyone is experiencing now is because overload of things that are happening, and people are just looking at other people and they're trying to set different other goals for themselves. Like they don't feel enough, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's important to have goals. I think having our desires and our goals and what we want to accomplish and what we want to see happen, that's what can motivate us. That's where we set the GPS of our internal navigation system. It's like, I want to go in that direction. And that's based on my desire. I have a desire to move over there. I think that the real suffering though comes in equating the happiness to ever getting there or the results. I feel like when I look at my life, the most amazing things that have happened in my life, the most transformative moments, the most special just up levels in my business, in my relationships, etc., were never planned by me. They were complete surprises that I didn't see coming. And everything basically that I planned didn't work out the way that I thought it would or wanted it to. And so what I've come to believe for myself is the plans that we set, the goals that we set, those are just there to keep us moving. They're just there to keep us going down the path. The real magic happens as you're walking the path. And so if we can just be in a space of allowing ourselves to truly enjoy the walking of the path, then we recognize that the intention, the purpose of our goals and our dreams and our visions is just to continue to keep us walking. And that the joy comes from the walking and what we get to experience along the way. And so I think that having those goals are important, but most people don't enjoy the journey. They wait and think that, again, once they get to that mountaintop, that's where the real joy happens. And I was there. I'm so blessed that I got to experience a mountaintop. And whether that feels silly to some people or not, for me, as an insecure, tiny little kid who entered high school, 73 pounds, 5 feet tall, not feeling attractive, not feeling manly, to win homecoming king, to get the scholarships, to be varsity sports, like to have those things, that was my goal. And I did it. And it was not the thing that fulfilled me. And if I could go back and redo it, I wonder what, like, I might still set the goal. I might be like, yeah, why not? Why not be varsity sports? Why not win homecoming? Sure, absolutely. And how much fun can I have along the
Be
way?
aware of that you're doing that. Yeah.
Exactly. How much like joy could I get? Could I win homecoming king because my entire intention is just making everyone I meet feel really good? Like those sorts of things. And that's how I'm doing my best to be that in life now is having strong desires but being really unattached to the outcomes.
Beautiful. It's I guess the analogy that comes to mind would be um comparing the menu at a restaurant with the food, thinking that the final goal is the food, but the actual thing that you came to the restaurant for. But it's actually the menu. It just tells you where you can order and what you can get out of it. But the food experience is that journey that you go through. Sometimes people um, find themselves like money as paper money. They put so much kind of like so much value into the paper itself, but it's not money. The paper money doesn't really give you anything. It's just a representation of value. It's the same as the menu is a representation of the real food. And the goal is a representation of the journey.
Mm. Yeah, I think that what when it comes to money, so many people are working so hard to get money. But what you're speaking to is the fact that if we were in this room for the rest of our lives and all we had in here was a bunch of money, can't do anything with it. It's not actually money that you want. Money just represents something. And so for most people, money represents security. So for some people, it might represent fun. For some people, it might whatever. And so they focus on making money when what they actually want is what they think the money will give them. And if more people spent their time focused on just building their life around the things they want in the first place, you're going to find that you don't need money for those. You don't need anything for those really. And then you're going to attract more of it. My approach and what has brought success into my life financially and in so many other ways is by saying, listen, I want to create. That's what I am. I'm a creative and I'm an explorer of consciousness. And I love to take what I'm gaining at the edges of my consciousness that I explore and put them into creations. So that was acting, whether that's music, whether that's poetry, whether that's a reality show that I made called The Art of Choosing Love, whatever it is, I'm a creator. That's what I want to do. And so I just create. And then as a result of that creative process, money comes in order for me to keep doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like I've had to have, before my poetry ever went viral, I had toured a one-man spoken word poetry show that I self-financed and toured around Canada, Australia, the United States. I toured this show on my own dime to crowds of like 50 people because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create, I wanted to express. Doing that then ultimately led me to refine my craft, and then I get pulled on stage at an event. I do a poem. That poem goes viral. It gets viewed 200 million times on Facebook. My social media goes crazy. All of a sudden, I'm getting invited to speak at all these events and get paid for that. Now I have people who are coming in to coach and want to coach with me. And like, all of this stuff happened as a result of me following the thing that's lighting me up. And then in order for me to be able to do it at a higher level, I need more resources. And so those resources come in so that I can keep doing that. But the moment that I let go of, I want to keep creating, what do I need the resources for? And so I'm manifesting those resources into my life to continue doing those things. My community, the Create community, which is my online personal development community, you know about it. Um, that community started actually at the beginning of COVID as a response to saying people need a place to come together and learn together and grow together and have a safe space. And so I launched that. I paid for that out of my own pocket for the first 2 months. And I only had the ability to do that because the resources had come in from all of these other things. And I believe that those resources come in because I continued to pour them into these things and create. And so the universe gives it to me. I'm unconsciously manifesting more resources in order for me to do the things that I want to do. And so that that for me is the key piece in recognizing you don't need the money. What you actually want is based off what you think the money will give you. And if you just start doing that, the money's going to show up for you.
Yeah, I certainly know exactly what you mean, and I've been experiencing that in abundance, especially after we moved to Miami, where I quit the corporate route world and started pursuing photography originally, and then started kind of messing around with interviews and recording conversations and things like that, and then now it turned into this. The more I go so the less I worry about how I'm gonna make money doing this, and I just follow what feels like a cool thing to do, what I think is like a cool project that I really enjoy working on, the easier it is to grow it and to make a business out of it. So when we moved to Miami, everything was just so smooth and easy, and the business was growing, and sometimes you try something really, really hard, and just things just get in the way. Like things just don't work out. And I believe that's when you're not on the right path. Like you're going against the stream in a way. And then sometimes it's just so, flowy, easy. Like you just do what you love. Everything just handed over to you. Maybe it's my personal experience, uh, but I'm very grateful for that experience. But I've certainly experienced kind of the two different versions of it, and I'm enjoying the version of pursuing my passion and what I really love doing, even though it's not a predictable path. Like I don't know what this is going to turn into tomorrow. I have some idea, but a lot of times those ideas are inaccurate, but still beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's well said. I feel like we have it's like, digging for oil or something. You dig and dig and dig, and then every once in a while you hit something and it goes and it flows, but it may not flow forever. But when it flows, celebrate, enjoy that. And one thing that I say all the time is it never works until it does. And like the life of an entrepreneur is test this, that doesn't work, test this, that doesn't work. By the time something works, do you know what I mean? By the time something works, how many different pivots have been made? Sure, some people have those stories of they launched this idea and it just took off so easily, blah, blah. Sure, those exist. And 99% of successful entrepreneurs will tell you that there are more quote unquote failures along the path than successes. I think I just saw a video from Gary Vee actually that was talking about if entrepreneurs their whole life would change if they realized that they were playing baseball, and basically if yeah, and it's just if you bat 300, which means if you get a hit 3 out of every 10 tries, you're a Hall of Famer. And so that's the thing with entrepreneurship, and I think it's so true, is if you can have one success out of 4 tries, you're gonna be a successful entrepreneur. And for most entrepreneurs or people who have visions like that, they stop. That when they don't persevere through things, and they don't pivot because they're so attached. And it's those attachments, I pride myself in being someone who is I let things die all the time. Like starting with myself, who I think myself to be, and all these things. And I say, wow, this is done. This is not okay. Great. And then it might look like now it's just about changing that, the format. With my online community, we used to have a online class every single day. And then that became 3 times a week. And then we realized it's my thought process was give people so much, just give them as much as possible. But that's actually not helpful. For most people, it's too much. And when they have too much, they might as well have nothing. And so now we go down to one class a week, but we focus more on making sure that they're applying it and integrating it. That in itself, that right there required months, months and months and months of shifts. And so to let it die in what it's been doesn't mean that it's been a failure. It means that you're actually listening and letting it change.
And then you're just in the process of transformation, a constant change. That's just uh, nature. That's how nature behaves. It's constantly evolving. Certain parts die out. Let's say when the I'm looking at the papaya tree that we have at home. Um, Certain leaves just fall off. But that's just the natural way of grow plant grows. And you also mentioned about giving them so much on a daily basis. What comes to mind is ayahuasca ceremony, or some kind of ceremony where you have a lot of downloads and you need to incorporate them. It takes a lot of time and work to incorporate all of those insights. And I do see some people do it in my opinion, more often than I would want to do it. Um, they're almost abusing it to an extent. Um, this kind of goes back to what you were saying. Like you don't have when you don't have time to process it, you're not really using the tool correctly. It's just blasting you with new knowledge, but if you don't have any buckets to like or capacity to even like capture any of that, like what's the point of that? I mean, the only point is to realize that there is a flow of downloads like that somewhere. That's kind of the only benefit if you're not capable of like internalizing any of that.
Mhm. Yeah, it just depends on what your actual goal is. Like, at the end of the day, what is your goal? My goal is to thrive, and thriving for me means to be happy above all else, just actually love life. Like, that's my number one goal, is to love life. And, um, one of the things that I love in my life is having financial resources to do what I want, to create first and foremost, just to be able to create cool things, to travel places, to not have to worry where my next meal is coming from. Like, that gives me more enjoyment for life. So I'm going to keep calling more resources. But that doesn't have to, that's not everyone. Not everyone needs to be a millionaire. Like, that may not be what's important to them. I think that we as a society tend to glorify certain things. We glorify becoming wealthy. Like, not everyone needs to be wealthy. It may not be their value system. So they'll actually be unhappy pursuing the wealth because it's not really that important to them. You have other things like we seem to idolize entrepreneurship. I've talked about entrepreneurship a bunch in this interview, and I don't think that most people actually want to be entrepreneurs. And so let's not make them feel bad because they're not starting their own business, because they think that somehow it's less like less inspiring for them to work a 9 to 5 job, that they need to go and start their own business and then be unhappy doing that. No, some people love actually having a 9 to 5 set thing, know what their job is, know what their role is, know that they got their paycheck. They love that, and that's great too. I think that, what is your goal? What is actually the thing that makes you happy and lights you up? And then you'll know, okay, how often should I be sitting plant medicine? How often should I be, taking classes to expand this aspect of myself? How much should I be working out? What type of diet should I be eating? All of these things come from really sitting with the question of, what do I want for my life?
Just dial them in exactly what for the optimal happiness level. They're all like variables the way I see it. You just like playing around with try a little bit more, a little bit less, see what's the most optimal for you. And that's how I usually decide what the right amount.
Yeah, and everything's a variable. Everything from what type of diet you want to eat to where you want to live to what you want to do for a living to how you want to dress. It's all a variable, and based on what you want for your life, there is not a right or wrong answer. But I tend to find there's some similarities. Like, most people feel much better when there's an aspect of what they do that provides like help to other people, when we feel like we're contributing to loving other people and helping other people. That tends to be a common thread amongst people who are happy. Having not being in scarcity, having at least the finances to the point of feeling like I can pay my rent, I can provide for my family, and I can have whatever amount to live the other lifestyle that I desire, even if it's simple. Great, awesome. Like, these sorts of things I find to be common threads. Um, but the variables are massive.
Could you describe for me the ideal case scenario future that you see for society, for humanity, that uh, obviously you're putting your energy to work towards? So define for me, like, what's that vision for you?
Yeah. So the ideal vision I have for society is one in which people are not um, living in a state of fear and scarcity and separatism. And that, I don't know what that translates to look like on a system level. Like, what does the political system look like when we're there? I don't know. I'm not the one who designed that. That's not mine. But I do know that for myself, I come from a background where I was so emotionally shut down, so disconnected from my heart, so scared of life, feeling so unsafe, feeling threatened. So I needed to overcompensate with success and achievement and all of these things. Like, the way that I behaved was based off of these aspects. And in my mind, the most loving world stems from reconnection to ourselves, loving ourselves so deeply and really truly feeling that, and that amplifying over into this love for life, and this love for life amplifying into, well, this love for the other humans and the other creatures and the planet. It's like all of that will overflow, and there are factors that go into that. I know that it's important for people to have um the tools and the faculties to process their deep emotional wounding and trauma. That's important when something hard happens, because like life, there are hard moments, there are sad moments, people die. And if you don't know how to process the death of a loved one, that can derail your entire life, right? If you don't know how to handle a breakup, that can derail your entire life. And so I know that my vision includes helping people have the tools for processing their emotions. I know that my vision has people having the tools for how to get into their bodies, like actually to feel safe in it, to feel healthy in it. I know that the vision I have for my life has people knowing the importance of creative expression so that they can follow that part of their heart that actually does feel lit up and not be told what they think they're supposed to do, but actually be who they are here to be. These are fundamental key components that I see as being necessary for a more loving world. And so I focus my attention on what I know. If that's what I believe is important, let me teach those things. Let me share those things. Let me help people with those things. I don't know what that looks like in technology. I don't know what that looks like in cryptocurrency or in medical system or whatever. I'll let other people handle that. I'm just going to stick to what I know and what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, we all have kind of a domain of expertise based on the experience that we happen to experience in life. And I think we all should be working in the area that combines the most amount of experiences that we've accumulated over the years. In fact, I think the more experiences that we can accumulate in what we're pursuing, the closer we are to our purpose. Like, for example, for me, I'm an immigrant. Like, that's one of the experience that's somewhat, I mean, there are millions of immigrants, but it's still a specialty combining that with, let's say, uh, my passion for visual aesthetic. That's another. And the more you can combine, the more unique that combination becomes. And no one else can replace you as a being is having this experience and trying to change the world in whatever unique way.
Yeah, and that's, I think, why it goes back to, at the end of the day, this is about self-exploration and self-love. Like, you're talking about finding your voice. The more of you discover, the more refined your voice becomes, the more unique and the more potent. And that is what will attract more of the life that you want, because it's more of you that's going out, and through the law of attraction, that's more of what you're going to attract back. So the more of myself I discover, the more of the more that life will feed me exactly what is a match to that. And it becomes more and more juicy. It becomes more and more magical.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about, so let's see where we are, 53. Talk about poetry and your kind of experience with it. How did you start? I would like to know. And then uh, maybe some emotional experience, what dive into it and stuff.
Yeah. So my experience was one where I was an actor, as a performer. I used to write poetry a lot when I was really young. So first grade, second grade, third grade. I used to write a lot of poetry. My mom has a bunch of scrapbooks full of poetry that I'd written. So it was always a part of me. There's no denying that. And I just didn't think of myself as a poet. It wasn't like every once in a while I might write a poem, and I find them in an old journal or something, but I didn't think of myself as a poet. And then I told you I was started sharing videos of my spiritual awakening and what I was learning and all of these things. I started sharing these videos. And then next thing I know, I'm going to these events and I'm just deepening in it. And I went to this event in Santa Monica, California, and it was a series of people talking for 5 minutes each. And so just different people, you got 5 minutes to speak about whatever. And the last person to go was a spoken word poet. And I'd never heard performance poetry before. I don't know why not, or maybe it just never had registered. But I then, as soon as he started, I just had this lightning bolt moment and went, I can do that. I just knew it. At first, I even thought maybe I would just needed to direct a video for him. And so I went up to him afterwards and I said, I'm a director. I would love to direct a video with you or something. And then I went home and went, maybe I could write my own. And I wrote a poem, and that poem is called Our Thoughts. And I wrote it within 24 hours. And the next day I went over to my friend's house and there were two friends there. And I just said, can I share this poem with you? And I shared the poem with them. And they liked it and they said, cool, really good. That is dope. Your next one should be called You Are Who You've Been Looking For. I said, sure, why not? This is new. And I went home and within like 48 hours, I'd written You Are Who You've Been Looking For, which is the poem that ultimately years later went viral and has been viewed over 200 million times.
Years later, I didn't know that it took some years for the world to discover it.
Oh yeah, it took some years. So like I was saying before, I wrote that. It was the second spoken word poem I ever wrote. And then I just felt I had fallen in love with poetry. And I started recording, I made a couple recordings of some of my poems. No More War is out there on the internet. Our Thoughts is out there on the internet, whatever. Then I decided I wanted to do a one-man show. I had been an actor and all these things. I'd seen this one woman show and I'd been inspired by it. I'd seen a poetry show done by a poet that I look up to a lot, In Q. And I went to his show and I just went, I want my own show. And so I designed my show and then I started touring it and toured it Australia, Canada, the United States. And then I was still a coach to the outside world, because in many ways, the outside world is telling you what you are because of how they perceive you. And so like my Instagram following, for example, it was like 4,000, 3,000, 4,000. That was it. And and most of them have been following me for my coaching, for the videos I put out about what I'd been learning about spirituality and consciousness. That's what it was. I filled group programs. I said, hey, I'm launching a new thing. Like that's what my social media was. And sure, I release poetry now occasionally, but I wasn't seen as a poet. But then I went on tour just because I wanted to. And my poetry show, it's called Permission to Think Freely. That show is actually a blend of poetry with personal development. And it's really unique and powerful. So in a way, it was the blend of both worlds. And then I get called on stage at this event and I do this poem and I get a standing ovation. And the guy whose event it was, Kyle Cease, he said, oh, I'm going to have my team send this to you. And they cut it together and they sent it to me. And I put it out on the internet and I got on my Facebook 500,000 views on that video, which, I didn't have really, that was like a lot. I mean, this is amazing. And then that video got turned into another video. Someone saw that video and then it gets to Goalcast, which is this network of just inspiring content. And they reached out to me and said, hey, can we do a version of this? And I said, sure. And so they make a version with music and with video, stock footage and stuff. And then months later, I get an email, says, hey, your video is going to be live in the next 72 hours. Awesome. Cool. Great. And then wake up one morning and my social media is just exploded. And I'm going, what is happening? What is going on here? It got 40 million views in the first 48 hours. It was insane what happened. And the cool thing was I was filming at that time a reality show called The Art of Choosing Love, which is available on YouTube. And so this process of me going viral, we have it on camera. We have it during that time. And now all of a sudden, my social media skyrockets from 5,000 people to 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 followers, but they all know me as a poet. And so,
Which is not a bad thing. It's great.
no, it's a great thing. It's just been an interesting journey because again, how do you introduce me, right? Like, am I a coach? Because that's how I've made most of my money and living and career for the last decade. Am I a poet? Because that's what most of my social media following has seen me as. Am I a podcast host? Like what are these things? And that's why, so like that's the journey with poetry for me, and more than anything. And then poetry turned into music. I started releasing hip hop pop music on Spotify under my moniker, which is just Roa, and that's an outlet for me. And that's the thing is, as I discover more of myself, there's more of myself to be expressed. And so poetry allows me to express a certain facet of my personality. Roa, my music, is something that allows me to express a different part of my personality, a little bit cockier, a little bit more swag, a little bit like has a edge to it. Then there's the part of me that loves exploration of consciousness and plant medicine. And I express a lot of those kinds of thoughts and stuff out into my podcast of like really deep exploration of like almost philosophy. And so I just find these avenues to express more of me, because as I discover more of me, the most loving way I can show up for myself is to allow it to express.
And so now, how would you introduce yourself? Like, how do you define your current state?
I don't even know. This is an ongoing thing. I describe myself as a devotee to creativity. I believe that creativity is the path of our greatest evolution. If you walk a creative path, you are going to evolve at what I believe to be the highest level. And it's also the most sustainable because it's fun. There's an aspect of it that's really just lights you up in a way that nothing else can. And so I devote myself to creativity. I devote myself to my own creativity and expression. I devote myself to helping other people find more of their own expression and creativity. And so that's the simple answer. And then I have a ton of other answers. I'm an architect of human consciousness. I help shape consciousness on an individual level with human through my coaching, to a collective level through the content that gets viewed millions of times. I'm a psychonaut that explores through the use of psychedelics into my own consciousness. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm a musician, all of these things. I'm a Renaissance man.
Yeah, they're all different aspects of you, and they're all part of you. It's not like one defines you, right?
And I think the era of needing to be defined by a career or put yourself in a box, I think that's done. So yeah, I'm just me. I'm Adam Roa.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And then I guess a similar question: what's your superpower? And in fact, this superpower question I'm planning to ask all of the people who I get to record, to potentially later have like a separate little video of people sharing what their superpower is.
Mm. Yeah, I have a lot of superpowers. Uh,
Share a few, like share the few that comes to mind.
I mean, one, a huge superpower of mine is willingness. The willingness to go so deep, the willingness to let myself crumble and dissolve and die, the willingness to try new things, the willingness to keep saying yes. That to me is a superpower that I have, and it translates in a lot of ways. A superpower that I have is I have the ability to take esoteric concepts, large ideas, philosophical musings, and translate them down into things that can be understood by most people. And that's where poetry is so valuable, to turn it into the simplicity of a poem. requires actually a deep understanding of it and a superpower to be able to do that. Um, and so that there's that superpower, and then I have this superpower energetically where I feel energy. I feel the flow of energy. So when I'm coaching with someone or I'm at an event or whatever, I can feel where the energy gets stuck in them, and I go, ooh, I can feel that actually getting stuck. And that helps me ask the right questions or direct the conversation or whatever in ways that really can expand that individual and also a business or whatever. I just feel the flow of energy. So those are just a few of my superpowers.
Those are really powerful superpowers. Yeah, I do see, and I did mention to you when we were recording your thing, your ability to communicate and break down. You kind of mentioned it now too, your ability to break down kind of undescribable concepts or experiences into a nuggets that are could be digested by those who haven't potentially experienced those themselves, and bringing them a little bit closer to that actual experience. So you're building that bridge with language, but between the undescribable and the mundane. So you're building that bridge for people to step on or potentially walk on and stuff. Yeah, yeah. So let's see. We are at 105, so we have a little bit left. So I also wanted to just out of my personal curiosity. So you mentioned you've dated a celebrity. And I wanted to hear your experience of what it's like. You briefly mentioned it, but obviously I've never. So I'm married, and my wife is not a celebrity. Far from that, and I've never really met anyone who had that experience. So that's where the question comes from.
What was it like?
Uh, what is it like to, I mean, you are in a way a celebrity too, being seen by a lot of people. Maybe you can answer that question instead. What is it like to be a celebrity?
Yeah, I mean, depending on your definition of celebrity, it's interesting because there are places in the world, especially within certain communities. Like if I go to Bali or if I go to a festival like Envision in Costa Rica, I'll get recognized way more. People come up to me because they're followers on Instagram or they've seen my poetry or whatever it is, and um, the nice thing about it, so I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right? And but the nice thing about it is that if someone's following me, they're aligned with my message, and my message is so authentic to me and who I am that I feel like I already know that we're gonna get along. You know what I mean? You don't follow. You wouldn't follow me. There's not a persona here. Like a lot of yeah, like my experience of dating someone who there's a persona to some degree that has to be it's kept. And so the people who follow the persona or the people who are just there for one aspect or whatever, with my particular social media following, it's a little different. And there's a level of authenticity and vulnerability that I bring to my expressions, my content that allows me to know if someone's coming up to me, they care about love. They're interested in making a more loving world. They are into some level of like esoteric connection around like energy and the exchange of energy. And so there's a foundation of, yo, we're going to get along. We're going to get along. And so my fans are just some of the most loving, epic humans. And so that's really cool. So when people come up to me, there's a respect and there's just a beauty to it. And there's also, the aspect of always being on display to some degree. There's times where I've been at events, for example, and at the event, it's a 3-day event and people are constantly coming up, to talk and you don't get that moment to just be. And eh, there's that. There's also, the arrows that I can take sometimes if I speak my mind about certain things and that people don't like. Yeah, you get not everyone likes what I have to say. And so putting yourself out there, I get mean messages. I've gotten death threats. I've gotten mean messages. I've gotten all of that. And that happens too. And that definitely is part of it. And I think that for me at the end of the day, I don't know how big it gets, right? In my mind, it's just only going to keep getting bigger if I keep doing what I do. Um, but who knows where the ceiling is to that? And that's not really in my control. I don't have a desire to be famous. That's not like a goal that I'm setting. I have a desire to create impact and change people's lives and to express myself creatively. And if doing those things leads to me getting way more followers, leads to me getting way more notoriety, leads to all of those things, then okay, I'm willing to accept that because it's in line with what I want to be doing with my life. And that's how I choose to focus it. What it ends up looking like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's well said. Yeah, it's uh I kind of had an idea what it's like, especially with kind of sometimes the small amount of negative comments. I've heard it from other people who are on in public, been exposed to so many people, that the negative comments could really make like hurt. Like you can really feel that energy. And I wonder if you, over the years, if you've kind of advanced your relationship with that type of energy, like be able to protect yourself in a way to not be hurt.
Yeah, you have to. You have to develop thicker skin. It's just, and it's it's still, we're still human. I'm still a human being. Having someone insult me on the internet, it's still like, ooh, that didn't feel good. And I constantly remind myself, what must that person be going through to like get on the internet and say mean things to a stranger who's putting out a loving message? That's the thing. It's not like my content is going out there attacking people. My content is going out there spreading love to the best of my ability. And so for someone to hear, I remember, and it doesn't happen as often on my own page, but a lot of other pages share my poetry and stuff. And so I found this page that had 3 million followers and they shared my poem. And I read the comments, and this is one of those pages that puts out all these different memes and it has like, it's all over the place, right? And there were so many people who were so mean in the comments, insulting what I was wearing, insulting like call it like basically I was wearing a white t-shirt, one of like a long white t-shirt. And someone taught it was like insulting me because they're like, yeah, it says it was a poem about consumerism and how don't buy things for your self-worth. And like, yeah, as he wears $150 t-shirt and blah, blah. And I was like, I got that t-shirt for $15 in Bali. I don't understand where does that even come from? This projection, this idea, and just people just insulting me for whatever. And I thought, how interesting that this message is literally saying, you are perfect. You get to love yourself more. You are worthy. And their response is to attack me. And so I think, wow, they must be hurting. They must be hurting to not even let that message in and to immediately go on the attack. And so that helps me stay in a space of compassion. And I'm also someone I'm a firm believer in like, I love everybody, but don't fuck with me. I'm a firm believer in, if you come, you're not going to come up to me and insult me on the street in my face like that. That's an internet thing. And if you do, like, I'll meet you in that confrontation. I'm not scared of you. That's something that's important that I think I just had on one of my podcasts I just recorded. We were talking about that. I think part of the issue is that so many men are actually afraid of confrontation, so that they feel tough on the internet because they're actually scared. They're scared little boys. And, as someone who, I think a huge healing thing on this planet is for men to also learn how to take care of themselves. I used to be a wrestler in high school. I used to do mixed martial arts in college, and I still train. Like, that's the type of thing that lets me go, great. You want to meet me in this confrontive energy? Let's meet in that confrontive energy. I will defend myself. I will defend my family. I will defend my loved ones. Awesome. And that doesn't take me away from wanting to love you. And we can meet there first, you know? And so we get to be warriors for love. We get to be spiritual badasses who are willing to take a stand for love and for compassion and stand up for that. You know, being the loving choice isn't always letting someone walk all over you. The loving choice isn't letting people just insult you and not responding. There are ways to do that. I've responded from my trigger and my anger, and I learned from that. It's like, okay, now I can respond. And there's the part of me, by the way, that's a witty kid that had to get by on his wit, who can definitely go into the let's like insult and make them feel shitty. I can go there. I have that instinct. And then that's when I go, breathe, show up in love.
What certainly helps, in my experience, is to have a conscious partner that help you see that part of yourself. You know, there's so much growth that happens. It's a feedback loop. Both of you are growing in that way. That just calling each other out every time that happens.
And that's the importance of community, you know, whether it's your partner or your friends, or like, that's why I started an online community. The Create community is meant for that, for people to have that place, to get those reflections, to have people who they can grow alongside, because you're 100% right. We don't do this in a vacuum. We need the,
Yeah, I mean, the analogy of a mirror, it's like you've been walking around the world, never seen yourself because there was no mirrors around. And then there's one experience you came up and there was like this big mirror. It's like looking at your back. It's like, whoa, that's also me. Like I've never seen that part of myself. It's kind of like that when other people are showing you as a reflection. But it also matters a lot how clear and non-distorted that reflection is, because then it could get kind of confusing for you to like understand what is actually you and what it's, you know. So that's kind of also an interesting journey of like navigating that space of like, oh, can I trust your judgment or like your feedback about me? I find it again with the partner, um, living long enough together, you really trust each other, and then uh, that message becomes you don't have to spend much energy on like pre-filtering it or like trying to uh, see what part of it was true, what part of it was would be disregarded in a way, you know. I think we are good. Yeah, man. I really appreciate you taking the time being here. Could you give me like a small share of the experience of talking like this? Because it's not a very typical, it's not a typical way at all. Like speaking it like that. So, what was your experience like, and if different?
yeah, well, I like this experience. I feel like you and I have just had a conversation. So I'm curious to see the footage and what it looks like, because that's gonna like be the first time I'll have experienced it in its full entirety, right? And I definitely felt just such a natural conversation, just you and I having a conversation, which is great.
Yeah, you certainly really kind of forget about, you know, I mean, for you, it's a little bit easier to forget that there's a camera and really tune into the message that you're carrying. Uh, but I hope that even then you will still see a subtle difference in the way you deliver. I don't know, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm actually curious myself to see that, you know.